If you're not familiar with Aragon, it is a boy whose name is Aragon and it's pronounced Aragon.
Yeah, so when I first read it, I definitely pronounced it Eragon. Because Aragon in The Lord of the Rings is spelled with an A. And so I was like, okay, well, it can't be. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, welcome to another David and Gabby Book Club podcast. I am David. This is my wife, Gabby.
Hi.
I told her she needed to say hi for all you audio people.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't watched but just listened, I usually just raise my hand.
Anyways, this is a podcast where we just chill out, hang out, talk about books and book-related topics. So, Gabby, if you want to tell us what we're talking about today.
Sure thing. So today we're going through David and I's reading stories, and we're going to talk about 5 books that have impacted us the most and have gotten us into reading.
And it's kind of like going through our story of reading, essentially. So,
yeah, I think I said that.
Did you say the story?
I think so.
Our child is not feeling great, and so we didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night. So that's what I'm blaming it on.
Okay.
Even though I wasn't up half the times that you were. Do you want to start with your books, or you want me to start with my books?
Yeah, why don't you start with your story and your books growing up?
Okay, so I remember that I read like as a kid, like in elementary school, but then once I got into middle school, I started like getting into sports, and I was way too cool to read books, you know.
I think it was still cool to read books.
I was an athlete. I was not a reader.
You can be both.
Well, yeah, I realize that now, but I'm talking
at the time. Okay.
Yeah, middle school me, I was like no to books. So I didn't really read hardly at all, like middle school through high school. Even when I was assigned books to read, I didn't hardly read them. I was the guy who always looked up Spark Notes and tried to do it that way. I was also a very good test taker.
I hope that your English teachers listen to this.
I mean, they probably knew.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
It's not like I didn't do great in my English classes.
Good. Deserved.
Like math and science were my thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so probably the first book I remember really getting into was Harry Potter 6. And if you didn't catch that episode, that was the first Harry Potter book that I read, mainly because my parents bought it for me for my birthday, thinking that I was the one who was really into Harry Potter, which I was, kind of. I was into the books. But
not into the books. You were into the movies.
Not into the books. I was into the movies, which at that point they had released up through The Goblet of Fire on the movies. But the 6th book had just come out, and my parents bought it for me for my birthday.
So how old were you?
I checked, and it came out, I think, in like 2009. So that would have been... I was a sophomore in high school, maybe a junior in high school. If you heard that, our baby is on the ground right now, chilling.
Yep.
So, but yeah, my parents bought it for me for my birthday, thinking that I was really into the books. I wasn't. My brother was the one who was reading the books. I hadn't read any of them, but since my parents bought it for me, I just was like, okay, I'll read it. Let's just try it. We're probably gonna have baby coos throughout this episode.
So 2009, how old were you in 2009?
Sophomore, junior year.
How old is that? Like 15, 16? 17. You were 17 years old.
Yeah.
Math.
Yeah.
Supposed to be your strong suit.
Yeah, so I was a sophomore or junior, depending on if it came out in the spring or the fall.
Okay.
And so I would have been 16 or 17. But long story short, parents bought it for me, thinking I was reading them. My brother was reading them. I had never read them, but I read it because my parents bought it for me.
That was sweet of you. I feel like a lot of people just wouldn't have read it. They would have just...
Well, part of it was like I did like Harry Potter. Like the movies were great, and I really liked the movies, especially the 4th one. Yeah. And so I was like...
Did your brother ask for it?
I don't think so, because at that time, my brother would have been a senior, or no, he would have already been graduated, so he'd been off to college, so he probably would have been too cool for Harry Potter, because I don't think he read them up past the 4th or the 5th, or no, the 4th, because all we had were the 4th. I had to buy the 5th at half-price books.
Interesting.
But yeah, so I read the 6th because I liked Harry Potter, and it was awesome. I loved it.
Right.
I just like burned through it. That was like probably the first book that I was like, I stayed up late reading it every night, and it was great. But then after that got me to reading the other Harry Potter books. So like I read the 6th, I'd seen up through the 4th movie, so I was like, I don't need to watch or I don't need to read those books again. I already know what happens, obviously. So I went and got the 5th book at Half Price Books, and then I read the 5th book. After that, I went to the 4th one because that was my favorite one. And then after that, I just didn't bother with the first 3. And then the 7th one came out and I read the 7th one. And then I didn't read them in order, or I didn't read the first 3 at all until we read them together in 2020 and the shutdown.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
if you didn't know.
It's sad, but it's true.
So that was my first one that I remember just like burning through and loving it. But that didn't really like.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that you didn't read the whole series. So
Yeah. And
so you burned through a few books because of that book, but it didn't like trigger.
It didn't like stick.
It didn't trigger.
The reading habit didn't stick.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. Like, I just loved Harry Potter. I didn't realize like there could be other series that I love as well, just as good. I didn't think about that. Like, it didn't cross my mind at all.
And really all you wanted was the story.
Yeah, and I just wanted the Harry Potter story.
Right, and you already had a couple pieces that you thought you had the whole picture of because of the movies.
Yeah.
And so you didn't even bother.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's my first one. Yep. So yeah, you want to go with what was your first one?
Okay, do we want to do this? We have like 3 different stages of life that we're going through. I have multiple books in the first stage of life.
Yeah, I have 2.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and finish that stage of life?
Okay. We got it to 3 stages of life, like growing up, pre-college, and then college, and then married life.
Mm-hmm. Just to kind of break down, help us think through like basically the 5 most impactful books that have gotten us into reading throughout our lives.
Each era.
Yeah, so eras of our lives. It reminds me, I don't know, my mom always used to watch the Days of Our Lives.
This is our eras tour.
Oh my goodness, stop. What's your second book?
Go Chiefs.
Continue.
We're filming this before the divisional round against the Texans, so sorry for everyone in Houston.
Wow, are you gonna edit that out if they lose?
I'll keep it in if they lose.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Just a continual reminder forever.
Anything can happen in the playoffs. So like they very well could beat the Chiefs.
This is not a football podcast. What is your second book?
But the Chiefs, I'm hoping they three-peat. Anyways, the second book that I had was actually my first book that was actually assigned to me that I read that I really enjoyed. So I might have read a little bit of the books that were assigned to me, but most of them I just didn't remember or didn't finish a lot of them. And I just didn't care for anything. It was just a drag anytime I was assigned a book to read. That's partially why I didn't, because I was like, this is a waste of my time.
It's a waste of my time.
This is why it took me 6 years to get through college. The first one that I remembered that I just burned through was called The Lords of Discipline.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was assigned it my senior year. Miss Unruh was my teacher at Blue Valley Northwest. She retired a while back.
Yeah. You told me about that.
Yeah. You read it.
I read it, yeah. Because you told me about that.
Because I told you it was really good, yeah.
And it was good.
It was really good. Basically, what The Lords of Discipline is about is by Pat Conroy, and it's about I think he's a college-aged guy. He's just graduated high school, and he's going to the Citadel, which is a military school. I don't know where it is. I think it's in one of the Carolinas. I could be completely wrong.
Somewhere in the east.
Yeah, somewhere in
Kansas.
East or Virginia.
So east of Kansas.
East. East of Kansas. That narrows it down a lot. It does narrow it down by half.
It does, yeah.
So yeah, he goes to the Citadel, and basically what happens is he's a basketball player there. So he's on the basketball team. I think he might have gone on a scholarship, or maybe everyone's in a scholarship at a military school, aren't they? Isn't that how it works?
I honestly have no idea.
I don't remember. Anyways, he's a freshman, and the culture at the Citadel,
it's super toxic.
Yeah, it's just very like ultimate hazing of the freshmen, which are called plebs. They're basically weeding out anyone who is not
deemed in their eyes worthy to be there.
Yeah. Well, just the hazing in general is supposed to weed out those who aren't good enough to make it through the program, just in general.
They target specific people,
he
though, that they don't like.
That, like, well, the big thing, I think it's his like junior or senior year, a like black kid comes to the school, and at that time it was like he was one of the first, and that was just ultra hazing towards him, and just because of like the racism, and even though like he probably could have made it easily, like if he wasn't black, because he was black, they were like hazing him extra hard because they're like, you were not getting through whatsoever. So it's more like that of him kind of
navigating
that, and just seeing the
underbelly, I think, of
the
that.
underbelly, and he discovers just a lot of corruption at the school through it. And it's a very,
I feel like he also
good
gets
read.
to make some decisions about like who he's going to be in that scenario.
Yeah. So it's a very good book. You should try it.
You should definitely
read it.
Lords of Discipline. It's not, I mean, there are some hard things that happen in it.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's not like
I'm trying to
totally transparent in terms of, I'm sure military schools are a lot worse than.
Yeah, I'm
in
just
terms
thinking
of
like
difficulty, but
some rough things happen to some kids in the school.
oh yeah.
So like
it's hazing, and it's like
it's intense hazing.
It's intense hazing. So it can like shake you up a little bit, but it's a very like.
But I read it really fast.
Yeah, I burned through that book.
And usually with books that characters are going through some really hard things like that, I don't. So
yeah, and even
it was a very compelling read.
I remember Miss Unruh. She knew that I was on the football team, and she knew that I didn't really. She could tell with my test taking that I didn't really read a whole lot of her books that she assigned. I'm not a great reader in terms of it's very hard for me to get through books, and I read very slow. So,
you just take in all of the details.
Yeah, and I need to be immersed into the book really, really well. And I remember her telling me when they assigned it first that she was like, "You really need to give this one a try because I think you'll like it." And I did.
Go Miss Unruh. Yay for her.
Yeah, she was great.
All right, pause because I think Walmart's here.
But yeah, now that we got Walmart in the fridge.
Walmart delivery is kind of amazing. I'm really spoiled.
Especially when you have kids, like.
Yeah.
The amount of time it saves you not having to take 2 kids under 2 to the grocery store once a week.
Here for it. Anyways, so the Lords of Discipline.
Yep, that was my second one in the growing up category. So
those are really good. And did that spark, do you remember even trying another book after that, or was it just a single? I
don't remember trying another book after that, but again, that was like towards the end of my senior year, and I did read stuff in college, but I didn't read any fiction or fantasy or anything like that. It was more like self-help, which we'll get to some of the self-help books that I really enjoyed in college. But yeah, I didn't.
Okay. It was just okay.
I think again, it was just like, it didn't cross my mind that there are other books out there that I could really like Harry Potter or like The Lords of Discipline. It never crossed my mind. So
interesting.
I don't know what that says about me.
Did you ever recommend those books to other people?
I recommended The Lords of Discipline to you.
Well, I know to me, but to your other cool athlete friends.
Well, I mean, my other athlete friends had to read it.
Yeah, but did they actually read it?
I have no idea.
Okay, so you didn't.
I didn't really talk about it outside, no.
Okay. That's what I was curious about.
One thing that was interesting was that Miss Unruh, she like, after we did all of that stuff with The Lords of Discipline, she had... I'm going to put this binky back in.
Back again?
All right.
Who knows for how long?
But the funny thing was that after all of our assignments and tests and things with the Lords of Discipline, everyone she noticed, like she could clearly notice through the assignments and the tests, like who actually read the book. And so afterwards, there's actually a movie that was released in like the 80s of the Lords of Discipline. And so she invited everyone who she could tell like really read the book to her house to watch the movie with. Yeah.
You were invited?
And I was invited.
Did you go?
Yeah. And there was like 5 people. And so I was like, so I went and I was like, so this must be the norm of like how many people actually read the books at Tea and Science.
Man. Was it kind of fun to watch it with people who actually read the book?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Did you guys talk about it at all?
Yeah, afterwards we talked about like just the differences, and because they made like some pretty big changes in the movie.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Miss Unruh is great.
It sounds like it. Way to go, English teachers out there.
But yeah, I just thought that was funny. It's like only 5, like, because I went into a school.
Well, I mean, she might have invited more people, but maybe not everyone was able to go.
Maybe, but still, my school, I graduated with 450 was in my graduating class. So my individual class was about like 30 people in my classroom size class. And Miss Unruh, she just taught senior English. And so she had like 4 or 5 of those classes of seniors.
Okay.
And all of them read The Lords of Discipline. I don't know if she had like different nights for each class or if that was it from all 4 of her. That's like 120 kids. So.
Wow. 5.
Yeah,
that's
like
awesome.
5 or 6.
That's awesome. And you were one of them. One of the privileged few.
Yeah, I was.
And it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, and it stuck with you.
Yep.
That's cool. Should I go into my story?
Yeah, go for it.
In my book. So I have, for as long as I can remember, enjoyed reading. I don't remember what sparked that. I actually meant to ask my mom, but then I forgot.
Well, it's really funny because you've been reading all your life, and so you had the hardest time thinking about like 5 books that got you into reading. And for me, I'm like, 5 books. Well, I've only read like 5 books before. So I was like, this one. Like I got like 5 minutes and I was done.
There were a couple memories that came up that I thought were kind of humorous. I remember, I think I was still in a booster seat in the car, so I was pretty young. And there was a boy in my class who knew how to read, and I liked him.
Ooh.
I don't even remember who it was.
What was this guy's name?
I don't know. But I remember that he could read, and so I would sit in the car pretending to read this book because I thought it would be cool, like to be cool enough for him, because I liked him. I needed to learn how to read too. So there was that memory. And then I guess my mom always took us to the library growing up, and that was one of my favorite places. My sisters would ask to go to the mall. I would ask to go to the library. When we went back to school shopping in a mall, I would get the things that I needed really fast, and then my dad and I would go to the bookstore that was in the mall while my sisters continued to shop for clothes. And then, so I had 4 sisters. There were a lot of us growing up. There was one book in particular. I have no idea what it was called. I know it was about polio. What do you know? Do you know polio? Like the disease
I know of it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't even know the whole story around it. I just know it revolved around polio. But I remember my mom borrowed it from the library, and she was like, just you and I are going to read this. And so her and I read it together, like while my sisters were taking a nap or something, which was kind of special because there were a lot of us. And so, yeah, I think she just knew that was kind of my love language, was reading. So she was like, this is a book that I liked growing up, and so we're going to read it together.
A book about polio.
A book about polio.
She would like a book about
She works in the medical field. I don't know.
Yeah, she like works with diseases. Yeah, specifically, like she worked with like COVID, like not like
she works in a lab. I think. I don't know all the specifics.
She didn't work with people with COVID. She like worked with like the actual disease of COVID. So it's like she does work with diseases. So book about polio is perfect.
I know. But anyways, so elementary school read all the time. Middle school read all the time. High school read all the time. My sisters, when they had athletic events that I went to, would have a book with me at all times. Like it was just, some people bring a purse with them. I brought a book with me. That's been my life.
I would take my Game Boy.
And I would bring my book. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I got into like Game Boys and stuff as well. But mainly reading. I have a lot of stories because I've just been reading a long time. Like when the 7th Harry Potter book came out, we had to mow. And we lived on a pretty good sized piece of land. And so it took a couple hours to mow on a riding lawnmower. And I just wanted to read Harry Potter. And so I took a lot of bathroom breaks. And I read a good chunk of that book just sitting on the floor in the bathroom because I wanted to read and I didn't want to mow. I also used to, in the summertime, I used to hide in different places and read so that I didn't have to do chores. This is just... So anyways, all of that to say, you can cut some of that out if you want to, but all of that to say, I have grown up reading, and I don't remember when it started, but thinking through books that I really enjoyed and sparked me to continue to read, I guess. It was hard, but I did it. Honestly, it was kind of hard to remember from my childhood what books that I even read. I think the William Allen White list was...
What is that?
It's like a list of books every year that win an award. I don't know more about that award. I just know that there was always a list of books called the William Allen White list books. If you know more, tell me. I pulled up a lot of those lists, and I, going through them, remembered a good chunk of those books. Anyways, it was really hard to choose from that span of time in my life, my childhood. But 3 books, one of them's a series. I know I gave you a hard time about that last time.
I'm a lot more lenient on the rules.
So 1, The Giver.
Ooh.
I know.
That was another one I read in school.
Yeah?
I actually read, and I enjoyed it. I didn't think about that till just now.
I think book. I liked it so much because the ending was vague.
Oh, yeah.
So I liked being able to decide for myself how the story ended. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. It was, if you've never read The Giver, it's a society... I don't know if it's a dystopian. I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's
dystopian.
Considered dystopia, I think.
Okay.
That's why we read it in school. It was dystopia.
Okay. Essentially, civilization has decided to get rid of emotions and anything that would cause conflict, I think.
Expression, basically making everyone the same.
Right. So to, I think, get rid of conflict, right?
Yeah. Yeah. To get rid of conflict, hurt, suffering, everything.
Everything bad. But if you think about it, anything that causes something bad also can be the root cause of something good.
Yeah. So the thing was, well, for an example,
to grieve someone that you love.
Yeah. So in that society, grieving was bad, but you grieve because you loved them so much.
Right. And so if you're not going to have grief, can you have love?
And there wasn't love because there wasn't the society basically decided because love leads to grief and loss and hurt, no love.
Right.
So nobody really felt love for one another. It was just
right. And
you're just going through the motions.
Right. This very sterilized society. Mm-hmm. But there's one person in the society who remembers what it was like before society became like this. And that person passes on their memories to the next person. And essentially, I don't know. At what point is this spoiling? I don't want to spoil.
Well, I mean... And the person's called the Giver. That's why it's called the Giver.
Right.
And the story is basically this kid
wrestling with...
Well, no, he's assigned to be the next giver because the giver is growing old. Mm-hmm. So the book is basically him giving him all the memories and all this stuff. And the purpose of the Giver is so that someone remembers what it was like before the society to understand why they needed to do the society. If that makes sense.
Right.
So it's basically his journey through that, and then
coming to terms with, is this good? Is this not good? Yeah. And seeing the things that are happening in the society in a new light.
Yeah, I think that was good. I think our baby needs a nap.
I would agree.
He's having trouble falling asleep.
Yes.
What are you doing, dude?
Okay. Well, we're kind of back. So that was my first book from this era of my life, The Giver. And I think that dystopian novels were very popular in this era of my life. And I think that
They were good.
yeah, they were good. Like Hunger Games, Maze Runner. There were just a lot of dystopians, but I think The Giver came out at the top of on my list because of the ending being so different, and it was a single book. So
and
I didn't have to choose a series.
Book, if I remember. It's not very long.
Yeah, definitely. It's easy to read.
And it's an easy read. Another reason why I got through it in school.
Mm-hmm. So the second one was a series. So The Lord of the Rings. I will say specifically for The Lord of the Rings, I enjoyed the Return of the King book the best. And I think that I went with this series because of the movies, honestly. I was obsessed with the Lord of the Rings movies, partially because I think I got to watch them before I was 13. My sister got them for Christmas, and then she secretly let me watch them with her, which was really cool. And so I fell in love with that story, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And so I watched the movies, and then I was like, there are books. There are books of this. Okay, let's let's find out more. And so I did. I read them. I think I've read them about once a year or once every other year since.
And that's why I love you.
7th grade.
I knew at that moment that she was the one.
Yep. It's kind of I don't know, maybe would typically be labeled a guy's story. I really like the theme of taking care. This is just an awkward setup. I'm trying here. I am trying hard. I don't know if this is going to work. The ring coming into Frodo's life, evil coming into the Shire, and deciding to take care of it instead of throwing it away for one, and encountering all of the hardships on the way. It's just it's a wonderful story. Yeah. And I had a crush on Aragorn. I'll say it.
Oh. I mean, who wouldn't have a crush on Aragorn?
Exactly.
Even the actress who played Eowyn, she had a crush on him.
Seriously?
Yeah, because so I was obsessed with the movies, because the movies came out when I was like in middle school, and you know how when you're in middle school you have just that one thing where you're like so obsessed with it, you're like, this might be a medical issue. That was me with the Lord of the Rings. So when the Two Towers came out, I watched the Two Towers over like 60 or 70 times because I kept track. Yeah, I'm telling you, I had a problem.
I would agree.
So, and I watched like all the special features, and I remember she said like she had a crush on like not Viggo Mortensen, like when he was out of character and everything, because he looked kind of different than with Aragorn and everything. But she said in costume, like on set, like that Aragorn, she like had a crush on. That's
hilarious. I mean, I understand why. I understand why.
He's a good looking man.
Yeah. And then my third book from this era was A Voice in the Wind by Francine Rivers, which
you read a lot.
I also read a lot. Yes, I've read multiple times.
That like 3 times since we've been married.
Probably. I would. Yeah, probably. I think 3 is probably a good number.
That's the Mark of the Lion, right?
Yep, the Mark of the Lion series. Yep. So it follows a slave girl during the fall of Jerusalem and her journey to a family in Rome. And yeah, would you take him while I talk? This is just hard. So anyways, I've read it a lot of times. I can't even count how many times I've read that book. I recommend it to almost everyone I meet, especially women. It follows a slave girl named Hadassah during the fall of Jerusalem, I think in like the 70s AD era, and how she travels to Rome and serves this family and just changes their lives through her life. And I just love that book so much. If we have a daughter, I want to name her Hattie.
We named our first son Sam after Samwise Gamgee.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to name our first daughter Hattie after the Voice in the Wind character.
Yeah, if we ever have a daughter, for sure. I think that those books topped my list because I wanted to read them again. I was always talking about them with anyone who would sit down to listen to me talk about them. One of the special things about reading, looking back at my childhood, was how I remembered what was going on when I was reading those books. Some of the books that I read when like my grandparents passed, those just are kind of burned into my mind in a different way. Or if I was having like a rough year at school, those books had a special place in my heart because of that. Or like my oldest sister getting married, that's a special time. And the books that I read, I just remember specific events around what books I was reading at that time, which is kind of fun. And I think that the characters and the stories kind of help me process through some of those things. And it's just special. I like reading. Those were my three. Those are my three. Yeah, I could have chosen 5 easily from this era. But the 3 that made my list are The Giver, The Lord of the Rings, and A Voice in the Wind, which all of them I read middle school or after, I think.
Yeah. So college now, I pretty much read just self-help books in college, like mainly Christian self-help books. I don't think I read a single thing of fiction.
That's not true. You tried The Lord of the Rings, didn't you?
I guess that's true. Yeah, I read the first 2 Lord of the Rings. But that didn't make my list.
Oh, okay.
That was the first time I read The Lord of the Rings. And I read Emma, but that was for a class.
I haven't even read Emma.
Really?
Yeah. Was it good?
I don't remember. It was rough for me to get into. I couldn't do it.
Okay, that's fair.
But I mean, it's a girl's book. So I took an elective. This is a tangent, but we're going to do this. I took an elective in college. I just needed a credit. I didn't need a specific class. So I took something that I thought would be fun. And it was a class called Fiction into Film. And it basically talked about like the process of adapting books to movies and film, and the things that you can do in movies that you can't do in books, but the things that books can do that you can't do in movies, so you have to adapt them, and different ways that people adapt them and stuff like that. And a lot of them would go through like Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
and
fun ones.
And read them and watch the movies. And I was like, that is for me. Sign me up. So I signed up for it. And I got the one professor who she was like, yeah, every person in here wants to be a literature major and wants to write their own book. So like she took it very seriously. And I was like, 99% of people taking this class are probably taking it. Well, the reason I'm taking it is it would be a cool and fun elective. And she made it not cool and fun. And so we did a ton of like literature short stories. And then the main one we did was Emma. And because there was like 3 or 4 different movies of Emma. And so, yeah, I read Emma.
Good.
It was
a learning experience.
It was a learning experience. That's a good way to say it.
As it was intended.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't enjoy that class.
Okay, so Emma didn't make your list.
No.
What did make your list in the college era?
I had technically 2, but we're going to go with one. The main one that I remember was A Resilient Life. It is by Gordon MacDonald, and we actually have it on our bookshelf. We don't own a lot of books, but that's one that I'm like, we're not getting rid of it because it's great. It's basically talking about how to live a resilient life, specifically with your faith in Jesus Christ. So having a relationship with Christ that endures through your life, through anything that happens, through your struggles, through like basically talking about living a faith that's resilient through your entire lifetime and just the different things that might come up.
I think I read it, but I don't remember much about it. Like, what did it talk about?
That I don't remember.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
He goes through a lot of like personal stories that have gone through and how his faith in Christ has like applied to it, if that makes sense. Yeah. In terms of...
To give you like some grace, it's probably been a solid 10 years since you've read that book.
Yeah.
So.
At least 10 years. Over 10 years that I've read it. But that one did spur more reading because I read that. I don't remember when. I think it was one of our small groups. We read it,
Okay.
I think, and I just
Blew through it.
blew through it.
That's awesome.
Because Gordon McDonald spoke at fall conference one year, and after that, like, our small group went through Resilient Life because he wrote that.
Okay.
And so, and I just blew through it. And after that, I read a lot more self-help books like it because I was like, this was great. I learned a lot from this. I got a lot from it. It was a fun read, and I'm going to read more. So I read a lot more of Gordon McDonald's books. And then I also, like, another one of them that I wrote down, but I'm not including it in my 5, was Killing Lions by...
Oh, I read that was like the guy's book, and there was a girl's book. Oh, I can't remember what it was called.
So I think it's John Eldridge. He wrote Wild at Heart, which is basically becoming a man, living out Christ and becoming a man, essentially. So Wild at Heart, which I actually haven't read, apparently goes through different stages of manhood. It's like as a kid, as a teen, going from teen to adult, so basically like college age, and then after college, and then growing. It goes through all the stages of a man's life in Wild at Heart. Killing Lions is just like the college part of it in terms of transitioning from being a teenager to becoming a man type thing. And it's very practical in terms of now you have to be in charge of your own money. How do you do this in a Christ-honoring way that's in being a man type thing? So it goes through very specific stuff. And I think he wrote it with his son. I don't remember his name.
But he wrote it.
They co-wrote it because it's the format is like
A dad talking to a son.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like the son explaining an issue that he's having, and then the dad is walking him through it.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
That's kind of the format of Killing Lions. So I actually had that at first, and then I remembered Resilient Life is kind of what caused all of that. So technically, I guess I'll have 6. Sorry.
You can make that like a 0.5.
Yeah.
It's an honorary mention.
Honorary mention. There it is. There it is. So.
So good. So you did read more in college.
Yeah. So I did. I read a good amount of, it was all self-help though. So I did read a good amount in college. I think that definitely A Resilient Life, I think,
Kind of sparked that.
But that was mainly self-help. I didn't read a whole lot of fiction still.
Well, and I think that it sounds like you found a book that you liked, and then you probably found others or were recommended others that kind of fit in a similar vein.
Yeah. That was the first time that I actually thought, because the other ones, I read them and I loved them, but I didn't really, it didn't cross my mind of, oh, there's probably other books like this that I would also like to read. That didn't cross my mind. This was the first time that I read it and I was like, I need more stuff like this. And I went and I found more stuff like it. So I think I read like 4 or 5 of Gordon McDonald's books, and then Killing Lions, and then just a bunch of other self-help stuff. So that was one of the first that sparked me reading self-help in college mainly. Because after college, I don't think I read very much.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny because our stories, I don't know if we should pause for me to get them to.
Yeah, we can pause. Again.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Again.
But yeah, Killing Lions was really good. If you're interested in that one, it's very practical. And A Resilient Life is also great. But yeah. What about your college career?
My college reading experience.
Career? Yeah.
So I don't know where I got the idea in my head, but I thought that once you graduated high school, you had to read adult books. And by adult books, I thought that meant like practical, self-help, better yourself books, not anything fun. And so I actually, my first days at college when I moved into the dorm, I brought Aragon to read. I don't know if I told you that.
No,
but
I didn't. I don't know.
I hadn't read it in a couple years, and I remember thinking, it's a story that I like. I don't know what college is going to be like. It'll be nice to have something that I can come back to that I know that I enjoy, but I couldn't get into it that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just too much going on. I ended up really thriving my freshman and making a lot of friends my freshman year of college. And I also was the person that read and took notes on every single one of my textbooks freshman year, first semester, which if you
must
actually
have destroyed your freshman year.
yeah, I had a really good first semester. Not gonna lie. But that took a lot of time. And so I was just burnt out on reading, and I've read a couple books here and there. I read C.S. Lewis. I read How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. A lot of spiritual self-help books. Not really any for fun. There was one book though that stood out that I don't know if it's an autobiography or a biography. I don't remember. Probably autobiography. The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. Have you ever heard of it?
I mean, we have it.
We
go through our books every once in a while to like kind of purge, because we're not minimalist, but like we try to
our
get
family's
rid of,
growing and we need more space, and
yeah. So like almost every year we go through all of our stuff and just like, do we need this? Do we not? Get rid of it.
right.
And I think every single time we go through our books and it's like The Hiding Place. It's like old and kind of tore up, and you're just like, no, we can't get rid of it
Because it's made my list of 5 most impactful books in my life. And so,
yeah. Well, no, I'm saying like, that's what you asked if I've heard of it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've picked it up and asked you about it like 6 times. And you're very passionate about it every time. So yes, I heard it.
yeah, I think I read the book right before going to college. I could not remember a single book that I read in college for fun that I really remember super well. It was just,
that's fine.
Yeah, it was a reading desert in my life. Anyways, and so it's kind of funny that our stories kind of flop.
That is funny.
Growing up, you didn't, at least once like middle school started, you didn't read, and I read all the time. And then once college hit, you started to read, and I really stopped.
Yeah.
I
think I read A Resilient Life like my sophomore year, towards the end of I don't know when it was. Never mind.
Yeah. Anyways, The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. It follows. It's a true story about a woman who, her and her family hid Jews during
Holocaust.
The Holocaust. That's the word I was looking for. I was like, not World War II, but like during that time, like what was it? During the Holocaust. And so it follows a Christian woman during the Holocaust and her family. Her family are watchmakers, or they fix watches, I think. And they hide Jewish people during the Holocaust, and they end up getting caught, and her family go to a concentration camp. It follows her story in the camp because she wrote the book, so she made it out, and it's just her story of living through that time. And it's an incredible story of faith. There's a section in there about thankfulness and how like the Lord says to be thankful in all things. And her and her sister were just having a conversation, and her sister, I think, was having a really hard time with that. She's like, how in the world am I supposed to be thankful in this circumstance? How am I supposed to be thankful for like the lice that is like covering my body right now? And it ended up that this is a spoiler. I think I want to talk a little bit spoiler. Is that okay?
Yeah. I mean, you skip forward a little bit. I'll have the chapter markers for when the spoilers are done.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Anyways, there's these, like, how am I supposed to be thankful for lice? And it ends up later in the story how they end up being able to smuggle in this Bible. And so they're sharing their faith with all of these people, with all of these women in their bunk. And none of the soldiers want to go into their bunk because of the lice. And so they're able to hide this Bible. And just like incredible stories of faith and just it being a true story. I haven't read it in a long time, but it is an excellent read. Not a fiction story, but an incredible story.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of just this past Sunday, Dr. Allen was talking about Paul, and he was imprisoned in Rome. And basically it was like he was on house arrest, so he was attached to this what was it called? Basically they're high-end soldiers. It was essentially like the secret service for Caesar. Yeah, I forgot what the name was. Protean
Guard or
something like that. But he was like, this is a good thing, my imprisonment, because he was sharing the gospel with the Protean guards, and now the gospel was, because they kept rotating through guards because one guard can't watch him 24/7, so they're rotating out guards, and he just keeps sharing the gospel with all these Protean guards, and then the gospel is kind of spreading through
their whole order of guards.
Caesar's guard, and the gospel spreading in Caesar's soldiers. So God used something bad situation like his imprisonment in Rome, and he was like going to be eventually killed, but he used that to spread the gospel more effectively through people who would not hear it otherwise. And then it reminds me of that, like the whole lice thing is like God enabled the gospel to be spread because of the lice, and and they weren't found out because the lice.
Right, which I mean, who would ever think to be thankful for lice?
Yeah, that's just wild.
Yeah, but I think that the college experience, it gave me an appreciation for books other than just fiction books that are good stories. Now if self-help books are the only thing you read ever, I'm not necessarily judging you. There's value to those books. I just think that for me to enjoy reading, I learned through that period that I need a good story to really resonate and to desire to read more. If all I'm doing is reading books to like better myself, I'm just constantly thinking about how to be better. Yeah. And that's just kind of exhausting. Yeah. So, but I gained an appreciation for them.
Honestly, I think that might be why I burned through A Resilient Life, because it's kind of, he's teaching you all these lessons, but all of them are like personal stories. So he's telling you his story and applying how Christ and his relationship with Christ got him through those different things. So that's probably why I burned through that, because it's a story essentially. And even a lot of his other books. So another one was Who Stole My Church? And that one's just straight up a fiction story and it teaches you just what's really important in church, because it's talking about how an old congregation, and they're very picky of like, we don't need this loud sound system, these electric guitars and these drums on our worship thing, like type thing, that whole struggle. And it's just how that church got through those kind of things, and just kind of teaching is like, what is like the important thing about church? What is it about? And who is the church, and what's the purpose? And does it really, your gripes about the drums being too loud, is that really valid? Type thing. But it's just it's a story. It's a fiction story, and it's really good. So fast forward, we both didn't really read a whole lot after college and up through even like our early marriage, right?
Right. There was a period of time where I was out of college. We were married. David had hobbies. We moved to where he grew up. So David had friends. And I didn't have hobbies. And I had some friends, but just not the same kind of community that he came into. And so I found myself bored and a little lonely some of the times. And so I tried to get back into reading a couple times, but it just didn't click early in our marriage. I reread not The Hiding Place, A Voice in the Wind. I reread that. I think I reread The Lord of the Rings. You know, the classics, the 5-star reads in my life. I reread some of those, but nothing new that sparked me wanting to read more. Yeah, during that time,
I didn't read at all. I don't remember anything that I read up until like this past year or two. So, like, how we got into reading now was I was on my phone all the time. Yeah. I think my screen time was up to like 5 or 6 hours a day on average for screen time.
Which now, trying to get time for the things that we want to do, it's like, how in the world?
How was I on my phone for that long?
6 hours. How long are we awake during the day?
And all of that time was spent like on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube mainly. I'd watch a lot of YouTube. But,
yeah, and I mean, I was on my phone too.
Yeah, we were both on the phone a lot. I was on it more though, and it was a problem for you.
Yeah, it caused some tension and like some frustration in certain situations because it didn't feel like
I was present.
Yeah, you were here, but you weren't here. And so that was kind of hard sometimes.
So because of that, you kind of suggested, hey, what if we, take social media off our phones? Because you had just read Digital Minimalism.
Oh, yeah.
I think you had just recently read that.
Yeah, that sounds
You're
right.
like, let's take social media off our phones and replace it with something. And instead of social media, we can replace it with books, and we can download the Kindle app. I think you already had a few books on Kindle. You're like, we can download the Kindle app, we can download Libby and check out books from the library and read them on the Kindle app or on Libby. And so that's what you suggested. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, I was like, I'm not a reader. Like that's not a thing.
It doesn't sound appealing.
That doesn't. Why? Yeah, I was like, that doesn't sound fun. Like,
yeah.
So I was like, no, because in my mind it's like, just in my free time, just read self-help books all the time. No, I don't want to do that.
Right, like. Replace mindlessness with mindfulness.
Hey, okay. All right.
So what happened next? Like I got rid of social media on my phone for a while. Yeah. And like all of my accounts, like I did like a digital detox. Like,
oh yeah, you went through with a whole detox with digital minimalism.
And I remember there were some like events and stuff that I just completely missed out on. Like some meal trains that I like straight up just didn't know about. But yeah, I don't remember what sparked you wanting to get into it too.
Well, you were wanting me to because you had just had enough of me on my phone on social media all the time.
Right.
I think I eventually was like, fine, I'll give it a try. Like it was more begrudgingly in terms of like doing the Kindle. Because I mean, I kind of see that as a problem, like the social media aspect, but I wasn't as gung-ho about the Kindle and replacing it with books.
Okay, yeah.
If that makes sense.
Because at that time we put screen time limits.
So we didn't get rid of social media completely. We just put screen time limits.
Well, I did for a time, and then we added it back, but with limits.
Yeah. So you did the detox, and that's when you got rid of them. But then we put I think we had a 1 hour screen time limit on all social media across the board, on our phones. So like,
and the key was we have each other's like,
we have each other's passwords. So like, I don't know the one on my phone because Gabby has it,
and I don't know the one on my phone because David has it.
So if we need something, I could give her my phone and be like, hey, can I have
more time on this
because I need to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, and so the one funny tangent is that whenever David asks for more time, I'm like, okay, whatever, here's 15 more minutes. And every time when I ask for more time, David's like, okay, whatever, here's an hour.
Yeah. So I'm like, whatever. All right. So we had a 1 hour across the board for combined, so you can spend 30 minutes on YouTube, 15 minutes on Instagram, 15 minutes on Twitter, and your hour's up. So we downloaded the Kindle, and the first book I wanted to read was Dune, because at the time, like, that was the big movie. Everyone's raving about Dune. Everyone's talking about it, and I'm like, I want to see what's going on with this whole Dune thing. And I checked it out, and it was tough.
It was not what he anticipated.
Yeah, just because like I didn't read very much. Like I'm not a great reader, and I didn't read a whole lot, so it was tough for me to get through. Didn't get into it, and I
didn't make it all the way through it either.
Yeah.
At that point in time, I also was still in, we'll call it my book drought. Yeah. I just had a hard time finding the next thing that I wanted to read.
And I was like, when I couldn't get into it, I had more of the attitude of just like, yeah, I don't know if this whole reading thing's going to work out.
Yeah.
Like, I tried it. It didn't work. That's when Gabby was like, Dune is a hard read.
Yeah,
And
it's a hard read. I didn't make it through it either. Like,
she's like the expert reader
I wouldn't say I'm an expert reader, but maybe
in the household. In the household, she's the elite.
But yeah, like, let's not start here. Let's try it again. Let's not make this our only.
Start small, start easy. We gotta get a book that's easy to read. And then so that's when you suggested
Aragon?
Yeah, you suggested Aragon.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you brought it to college with you.
Yeah, I brought it to college with me. Which I couldn't get into at that point in time, but I brought it.
But yeah, you suggested it because one, you liked Aragon a lot.
And it reminded me of, it has similarities to the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and it's very Lord of the Rings-esque. Like it has orc-like characters, it has elves, it has magic, it has dwarves. So it's very Lord of the Rings inspired. And because I love Lord of the Rings, even though I hadn't fully read the books at that time, and you liked it, and you were like, it's written for kids, so it's an easy read.
Yeah. And it was really popular when it came out.
Yeah, it was really popular when it came out because it was kind of riding on the coattails of Lord of the Rings, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what.
Similar time.
Yeah,
as
it
the
just
movies came
it
out.
went off.
Yeah,
it went off.
Popped off. I just asked Siri, and she said 2006 is when Aragon was released. So that would have been the movies came out in 2001, 2, and 3, The Lord of the Rings. So
yeah, that could be.
That it kind of rode the coattails of that in terms of it's a similar world, but so like a lot of kids were probably like, I can't watch The Lord of the Rings, but this is like it, and it's dragons.
Yeah, and I also think it's just a good story.
Yeah, and it's a good story. So yeah, so we tried that. I had never read them, but honestly, that's my fourth or 4.5, I guess, since Killing Lions was a half point.
Yeah.
But yeah, my fourth one was Aragon. I really enjoyed it. It was a really, it wasn't super intense like throughout the whole book. It was a very slow, laid back, like you're going on a journey and an adventure with Aragon. So if you're not familiar with Aragon, it is a boy whose name is Aragon, and it's pronounced Aragon.
Yeah, so when I first read it, I definitely pronounced it Eragon. Because Aragon in The Lord of the Rings is spelled with an A. And so I was like, okay, well, it can't be. Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you watch the movie, which that was another sad thing, you were,
oh my goodness, the movie.
You were like, Aragon?
It's like,
who is Aragon?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's a kid. His name is Aragon, and he's like a farmer in a small town, and he discovers a dragon egg just randomly pops out of nowhere when he's like in the woods, and he grabs it, doesn't know what it is, and it hatches for him. And essentially this world it's
like there's this tyrant king.
Yeah, there's a tyrant king, and he's like the last of the dragon riders, because apparently there used to be a ton of dragon riders.
And they used to keep order in the land.
Yeah, keep order in the land. The dragons would hatch and choose their rider, and they would enable the dragon riders to have magic and use magic. And so they were more powerful because, one, they would channel the power of their dragons. Their dragons were powerful, and now they have magic through their dragons. So they were kind of the order of the day. But now it's just the tyrant king who is the dragon rider, and that's it. And the dragons were kind of like extinct, and there appeared a dragon egg, and it hatched and chose Aragon. And so it's kind of his journey of kind of becoming and growing into being a dragon rider and taking down Galbatorix, the king. So it's that classic story of like oppressive tyrant king, and this random farmer kid grows up and tries to take down the establishment. It's a fun read. Yeah. Aragon specifically is really nice because it's not really the goal that he's pursuing is just like, I want to learn how to become a dragon rider. type thing. So you're not really going anywhere specific. You're just like, all right, let's do this. There's no end in sight, if that makes sense. You're just going on a journey with him and you don't know what's going to happen. You're just learning on the way with him. So it's very chill in comparison to other books. But it's fun. I enjoyed it a lot. It was cool just hanging out with Aragon. And
you finished it. You finished the whole series.
Yeah, I finished the whole series. The second book was rough.
Yeah, the beginning of the second book, David was like...
Which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Which we are... So in a couple episodes from now, I think it's going to be like 3 or 4 from now, towards the end of February, we're going to have a review and spoiler talk of like the whole series. So if you've read them and want to join us for it, that'd be great. But if you want to start reading them now, and you can. They're really fun reads.
Yeah.
I'd recommend them just a chill, relaxed read.
Yeah.
For kids or adults.
Or adults.
I read it first time last year, 2 years ago. And so I was like 30 when I first read it, and I enjoyed them. Yeah, we'll have that episode in a few weeks.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think what was different about reading Aragon this time around was reading it with David. And I had forgotten a lot of the things that happened in it because I hadn't read it in a long time.
Yeah.
And we kept talking to one another, like, where are you at? What's happening? What do you think?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a fun, like, couple book to get into, right? Like, to read the same book and to compare and to have somebody to talk to about what you're reading and to be excited about it.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me finish the book and made me excited to read something after it as well. And you do a great job of, when you get into something, like, you're going to figure out everything, every intricacy about it. And so, like, you're going to research, right? He's gotten into, like, audio, has researched all things audio, has gone into video, researched all things video. Like, if David gets into something, like, he is into it. And so David at this point was like, okay, I'm into reading. He's like,
yeah, that was like a switch of like, that was when it flipped of like, okay, I need to find every single book that I ever want to read ever.
Yeah, and that's what I had been missing. I had not done a good job of finding what book I wanted to read next, right?
Like researching
and researching. That's not my strength.
Like.
Yeah, and so David's over here like,
have you heard of this series? This series?
You're right. And I'm
this
like,
this series looks really good. It's about this, and this.
Right?
This person says it's on his top list. Like,
and so I'm like, whoa. Like, what has happened? How the roles have reversed. And so I'm over here like taking notes like, okay, yeah. And so I think that doing it together really sparked the joy of reading again. One of the books that he wanted to read that we read together was, because at this point we were like, okay, let's just read all the same books.
Yeah, that was another, yeah.
Because this was a great experience. So like, let's do it again.
Yeah. So we were like, we're not reading anything different. We're just going to read the same thing all the time.
All the time.
Everyone.
And one of those books was Red Rising.
Yeah.
And
that was was that on your list?
That's on my list because
that's on my list.
Okay, well, I said it first.
Red Rising is my thing.
It is David's thing. It is David's thing, but it's on my list because it was one of the first books that I read since graduating high school that was new, that I devoured, and that made me want to read more. Part of that was probably because we read it together, but I forgot where it was going.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was we heard about it from Haley Pham's YouTube channel.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So I guess that's another kind of tangent story of like how we got into reading and why you suggested reading to replace social media. Because I had another YouTube channel at the time. It's Apollo Disc Golf if you're interested. It's still up. I haven't posted a video in a little bit because I freelance stuff. Anyway, never mind. But because I was like researching how to do YouTube, like I was researching other YouTube channel, like the successful ones. And one of them was Ryan Trahan. And so I just watched a lot of his stuff to kind of learn, okay, what is he doing? What is this stuff that is clicking with and successful on YouTube? And from that, his wife, Haley Pham, is a booktuber. And so I kind of was like, Gabby might like that because she does books and Gabby likes books. And so we started watching Haley Pham together, and that's when that sparked the interest of like, what if we try reading instead of social media type thing? And she also suggested one of her books. Like I went back because she talked about like a lot of sci-fi fantasy stuff that sounded cool, because most of her stuff that she talks about is romance, but there was an episode or something that she talked about like fantasy books and stuff. And one of them that she mentioned was Red Rising. And she mentioned how like it's very popular and there's lots of holds on it. And I looked and it was a long hold.
But we waited for the hold, right?
Yeah, because I did it, but I put it on hold, I think, before we started Aragon.
Oh, okay.
So it took like 3 months for us to get the hold up, but because we were reading Aragon, it was fine.
Gotcha.
We might have read something else in between there too. I don't remember. But anyways, that's why I thought of Red Rising was because of Haley Pham's videos.
Yeah. And so since then, we definitely hit a point where we had to stop reading the same thing all the time, because just sometimes we're in the mood for different things. I think it was Will of the Many that I was like, okay, I can't finish this. Wasn't it Will of the Many?
I can't remember if it was the Will of the Many or if it was
Dark
Age.
One
it was
of
one
two.
of those two. You kind of realized that, okay, maybe my taste is
like we overlap.
We overlap, but I definitely lean a lot more towards certain like dark, intense stuff than you do. So
right. And so now we don't always read the same thing, but we do every now and then.
Yeah.
Like if there's something that one of us sees and we're like, oh, I think that I would really like this, and I think that you would really like this, and I think that we should do this together, because that's still so fun.
Like Mistborn. Like we both looked at it and we were like, I think this is something that we'd both like, and we're both reading it right now, which that's going to be next week's episode is we're going to be talking Mistborn review and spoiler talk, but
yeah, I think that the big difference that's changed in the last 2 years, that like what I would consider myself a reader again. I think that for a few years there, I wouldn't have considered myself necessarily a reader, but that I think that the difference has been doing it together. Yeah. And also your love of finding the next book has really sparked that for me. And so having
I have a long list.
Yeah, such a long list. I don't just like go to the library and like try to find something and come back discouraged when I don't find something that I like anymore, because that used to be my strategy. And it worked sometimes.
Yeah.
But now I feel like
that's how you found Banyan Moon, which made it your top 5 of 2024.
Yeah, it still is a strategy that I utilize at times, but I'm learning that being more strategic with what I pick up next really helps me want to read more, because I only have so many hours in a day. And so if I'm going to spend the time reading, I want to make sure that like it's probably going to fall into something that I enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah. Red Rising, that was my 5th, and it's
really good.
It's so good. If you don't know Red Rising, it's a sci-fi. It's in the future, and the main character, Darrow, is a slave on Mars. So he's a slave terraforming Mars, and then he's
and there's like this color caste system, and reds are at the bottom.
So it's color
golds
caste.
Are at the
gold, you got gold at the top. Then you got like gold, silver, coppers, greens, purples, whites, obsidian, pinks, and oranges, and then red is at the bottom of the hierarchy. And they're basically the slaves of society. And he's kind of recruited by the Sons of Ares, which is
like a rebellion group.
A rebellion group, to kind of just take down the society and free just everyone. Because like the Reds are kind of considered oppressed the most in terms of slavery, but pretty much like there's kind of 3 big sections, and like the bottom 2 sections are like they're all enslaved essentially, just in different ways. So only the top ones are like gold, silver, whites are like not slays, but even then, golds are at the top.
Yeah.
It's very good. And it's I would call it a like modern style of writing, in the sense of like the modern era now is all about retention and holding retention and doing that through just constant engagement. And I don't know the word for it.
I don't know either.
I always think of like Mr. Beast videos. If you've ever watched a Mr. Beast video, it's like constant.
One thing to the next thing to the next thing.
It doesn't
You don't get bored. You don't have time to get bored.
Yeah, you don't have time to get bored. You don't have time. It's
like
very,
you want to know what's going on next.
Yeah, there's just no breaks. It's always going. And I feel like Red Rising, although it's not super overwhelming, I don't think it is that kind of style in terms of like he doesn't give you much breaks. It's very like
engaging the whole time,
engaging the entire time, and for which could be like a plus or a minus depending on your personality
and your mood.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something else I'm learning with reading, is that different times in my life, different times in the year, I just am in the mood for something different. And so trying to figure out how to define what I want to read helps me read more. Am I in the mood for something fun, laid back, easy? Am I wanting to get into a world?
Am I in the mood for Stephen King?
Never. That's not fair. But yeah. Like what am I in the mood for right now? And defining that really helps. Spark reading. So
and it helped me because like it was early on in my reading journey, and it was hard for me to get into, like I needed something to like keep me engaged, to like pull me along, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because I was early in I was like the second, maybe third series I'd ever read in this most recent like
time span of your
time of reading. And so that really helped me of like, I always wanted to just keep reading because I was like, I need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then something's resolved but it's resolved, but opens up a whole nother thing that I need to know what's going on. So it didn't let me off the hook. And because of that, I was able to just burn through it. And the amount of things, like if I had to list the amount of things that happen in each book, is like the amount of things that happen could fill like 3 books if he was like a slower writer and different style. But because of his style, the amount of stuff that happens in those books is just insane. So it depends on what mood you're in, because I always thought of it as a positive, but Brent Morgan on my fantasy football group chat, he always, like, we recommended it to him because he's a reader as well, and he read it and he almost saw it as like that was kind of a negative for him. He was like, I didn't really have a break to just process stuff, which I was like, didn't think about it that way. Because like at the chapter endings, he leaves almost every chapter is on like a cliffhanger that you need to keep reading for. So it is like, I didn't like that because I didn't have a time to just break and relax and kind of process what's going on. So I was like, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So depends on your point of view.
Yeah. And like looking back at this, I think that the books that I've chosen from each kind of era of my life so far that have made the top 5 books for like got me into reading more, I think they just fit the time of my life perfectly, which, wow, mind blown. That's kind of crazy. Cool though.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed getting into the fiction and fantasy. But also, like, I have enjoyed the breaks of reading self-help, because even the self-help ones now
are easier to read.
When I do take breaks from the fantasy and fiction to read a couple self-help books, I just burned through them because it's engaging and it's a break and something new.
So I think it's fair to say that those are our 5 books that really got us into reading at different times in our lives. And that's kind of how we got into reading currently. And like at this point, it's been almost 2 years strong.
Almost, this summer. I think it was in July or August of 23.
Yeah, so a year and a half at this point. So I think it's fair to say like we're going strong. I don't want to get like too confident, but at this point, I feel pretty confident saying,
and we've enjoyed it a lot.
We're readers.
So.
And it's fun. And we're doing it together, which makes it more fun.
Yep.
All
But yeah, if you made it to this point in the video, like, give it a like, subscribe. I mean, you're here watching, like you made it to the end. You obviously enjoyed it. So if you hit the like button, that'd be great. And subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast and you want to leave a review, that would mean a lot, because I mean, obviously you've listened to the end if you're hearing us right now. So if you wanted to leave a review for the podcast and share it, that'd be much
great.
Appreciated.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for
yeah.
Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah.
See ya.